My next guest is Nevada's first Black representative in Congress. He also made history as the first Black majority leader of the Nevada State Senate, and he currently serves as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Welcome, Representative Stephen Horsford.
Thank you so much for having me on, Cheyanne.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. You know, it would not be Black History Month if we were not talking about history makers, and you are one of those history makers. I would love just to hear you discuss a little bit about your journey with the Nevada State Assembly, and if you knew at the time just how important and the gravity of your election was to the state of Nevada.
Well, I was born and raised here in Nevada, Las Vegas. This is my home, it's my community, and I'm just honored to be able to continue to serve. Before I was ever elected to anything, I worked in my community, running the state's largest employment and training agency, a nonprofit organization that helped thousands of people get careers in good paying jobs. That is what motivated me to want to do more. I actually started in the Nevada State Legislature as an intern in college, and that is what helped expose me to public policy and the fact that there was a role for me to help effectuate positive change in my community. And that is why I'm always encouraging young people to explore opportunities through fellowships, through internships, because that's what's going to ultimately determine their success.
Absolutely. You know, Congressman, we just came out of the 2022 midterms where we saw record numbers of Black Americans running for both parties up and down the ballot, record numbers being elected. Talk about just how important it is that we see this representation increasing, but also how we can keep that momentum going forward.
Really honored to serve as the chair for the Congressional Black Caucus. We have the most members that we've ever had in the history. At 57, we'll have one more member joining us, Jennifer McClellan in Virginia. She's actually running today for her election, and we'll know the results of that by the end of the month, and we'll be at 58 members. But we're also looking to see that we have the highest number of people from diverse districts that are not predominantly African American in population, or in the case of my district, for example, it's a majority minority district, and so it's about a coalition of support that's helped those of us get elected. We have 9 new members joining us in the Congressional Black Caucus. Our first Gen Z representative, Representative Maxwell Frost from Florida. And we're very excited to have such a young, dynamic leader, along with the other new members who are joining the Congressional Black Caucus.
The CBC does a lot of work. One of the phrases that we often hear associated with the CBC is how they're the voice of our Congress, and they are really there to help represent and bring Black voices and Black issues to our legislators and our policymakers. How have you seen, or how do you feel that the CBC's agenda has perhaps grown or evolved since its inception so many years ago?
You're absolutely right. So the Congressional Black Caucus just celebrated our 50th anniversary. We're now in our 51st year, and I'm proud to be able to set a direction for the next 50 years. But to be clear, we stand on the shoulders of the 13 founders who started the Congressional Black Caucus back in 1971. And in our bylaws and in the creation of our organization, the mission is always about representing the communities who are oftentimes marginalized, ignored, or not at the table. That has changed and it has improved, but there's still much more work that we have to do. I'm focused, for example, on racial equity and justice to make sure, whether it's in education, in workforce, in housing and healthcare, in entrepreneurship and small business development, that we're actually moving the progress forward to make sure that the systemic issues that have left our community behind, they don't continue to leave us out when it comes to outcomes on racial equity in these key areas of quality of life.
You know, when we discuss economic equity, a big thing, as you mentioned, is when we talk about equitable housing opportunities, when we talk about home ownership. Why is home ownership and access to equitable housing so important when it comes to things like building generational wealth?
You know, Cheyanne, thank you so much for asking this important question. You know, during the implementation of the GI Bill, one of the things that people don't know is Black veterans weren't included in the benefits and didn't receive equitable treatment of those benefits, which helped create wealth for our veterans who were coming back from war. Many of them who bought homes for the first time, that helped their family enter the middle class. It allowed them to build equity. A lot of people use that equity to put their kids through college, to start a small business for themselves or their family. And that's traditionally how people have built wealth. Well, generationally for Black people, we haven't had the same opportunity for that wealth creation. And so that is why issues of home ownership, housing equity, eradicating homelessness are so important. We made history just recently with one of our members becoming the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and one of her key priorities is the issue of housing, eradicating homelessness, and making sure that we're providing home ownership opportunities to more families, because that is about improving people's wealth and passing that wealth down to the next generation of our children and children's children.
We have seen reports come out about appraisals, home appraisals, where we're seeing racial discrepancies in how Black homes are appraised versus white homes. Is there something that you see Congress being able to do to step in and make sure that these discrepancies don't continue?
Absolutely. Again, I want to commend one of our former members and chairs of the Congressional Black Caucus, Secretary Marcia Fudge, who oversees housing and urban development. She's actually tackling this issue of the inequity of home appraisals, which again is treating Black homeowners differently than other homeowners. It's not fair that in the same neighborhood for the same size home that a Black home could be appraised at considerably less amount compared to a counterpart. So with the leadership of Secretary Fudge and members of the Congressional Black Caucus, I serve on the Housing Subcommittee on Financial Services, and this is one of the priorities that the Secretary to move this issue forward. It's an issue of fairness. We're not trying to say we want something different than any other community. We want the same equitable treatment and appraised value for our homes as anyone else's home in any other neighborhood, regardless of zip code, regardless of community.
A big part of racial justice, racial equity is also education. Now, right now, we are seeing a little bit of a fight play out when it comes to some of the student loan forgiveness plans that are out there. We have, of course, heard President Biden is forgiving up to $20,000 in student loans. How important, when we think about opportunities, whether that's job opportunities or home ownership opportunities, is closing the racial discrepancies when it comes to access to education?
So the issue of college affordability is a huge issue when it comes to racial equity. I want to commend a number of our members, including Representative Ayanna Pressley, who has worked tirelessly to bring voice to this issue of the student debt crisis. About 70% of the students and families who are getting that $20,000 loan forgiveness are on Pell Grants. That means they have an income requirement to even qualify to receive a Pell loan. These are students and families who are typically low or moderate income. They're families that are working to improve their education and their skills. And no one should have to go into debt or have mountains of loans coming out of college simply to invest in their abilities and to have the skills to enter the workforce or to start their own business. So we commend the president for doing what he could on the executive order basis, but we are calling on Congress to go further around the issue of college affordability. We believe that the access to community college should be open to everyone. We believe that apprenticeship models should be more accessible because they provide an avenue for many people, particularly in the Black community, to develop the skills while on the job. We also believe that we should provide assistance for shorter term training because you don't necessarily need a 2 or 4 year degree to acquire the skills for the jobs that are in demand today. So those are other measures that we're working on a congressional front to make college more affordable for all families, particularly Black families.
I want to touch again briefly when we just mentioned President Joe Biden. I want to go back to him very briefly because we just watched his State of the Union just this month, and not only did we see the family of Tyre Nichols at that State of the Union, we saw members of the CBC invite other families who have been horrendously impacted by police violence in attendance as well. Can you talk to me about why that was so important for the CBC to do that? And as I'm aware of, the CBC members actually had a meeting with President Joe Biden before the State of the Union about police brutality. Can you just talk to us a little bit about where the conversations with the CBC are at this moment?
Well, absolutely. And first, I had an opportunity to speak to the family of Tyre Nichols, the mother and the father, prior to the funeral, obviously extended our condolences and asked them what they wanted in this moment. And what they told us is to remind people who Tyre Nichols was. He was a son. He was a father of a 4-year-old child. He was a young man with a lot of potential. He loved skateboarding and he loved sunsets and photography. In fact, he had just left taking photography of sunset when he was pulled over by those Memphis police officers, taken out of his car, brutally beaten, and died days later as a result. No one in any community should die because of a traffic stop in America. And what we've said as the Congressional Black Caucus is that bad policing shouldn't exist anywhere. And all of us should agree that bad policing has no place. And what we're calling for is a sense of public safety and accountability in every community, Black or brown or white. This is not a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. It's a public safety and accountability issue. We did ask for a meeting with the president and the vice president. They accepted. We met with them. We asked the president to use the moment of the State of the Union address to speak to the hearts of the American people about why this issue is so important, particularly to Black people, because we're disproportionately affected by police incidents and police brutality. But it's not to the exception of our community, because it may have been Tyre Nichols yesterday. It could be any one of us today or tomorrow. And so I want to commend the president for using the moment to talk about why this issue of public safety and accountability is so important. And the fact that he used the reference of the talk that so many of us as parents of Black children have to give about how they have to comport themselves when they come into contact with law enforcement is something that was very important for the entire country to hear. It resonated, and I'm glad to see that so many of my Republican colleagues agreed with the need for accountability in policing in America. And we look forward to working with them in that in the months to come.
Congressman, just very quickly, thinking back through our discussion today about the work that you have ahead of you, that the CBC has ahead of it, how confident are you that we can see a racially equitable society finally come to reality?
Well, look, make no mistake about it. This is a very hard issue to confront. And it didn't happen. Inequities on race didn't happen overnight in this country. It's based on the founding systemic issues from slavery to Jim Crow laws to now mass incarceration. And we understand that these are not easy issues. But as the president said, we can do big things. And I believe it is possible to create more racial inclusive policies that are more equitable. For example, when you look at areas of workforce or housing or healthcare, by being more intentional, by having data-driven policies, by promoting policies that make sure that no one is those who have been structurally marginalized, we can have more racially equitable policies. And that is what the Congressional Black Caucus is working towards. We are known as the conscience of the Congress, and we will continue to work for these policies for as long as they take, because we stand on the shoulders of those who had to work a whole lot harder to accomplish policies on civil rights, on fair housing, on voting rights. So this challenge on racial equity is no bigger than what those who have preceded us have had to fight for.
Representative Stephen Horsford, thank you so much for your time today. We so appreciate you coming on the show.
It's great to be on. Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to the end of our program. A big thank you to all of our guests and to all of you for watching. For those of you who missed any of the conversations this afternoon, we will have video from the event up on our website shortly. I'm Cheyanne Daniels. I hope you enjoyed the program and have a great rest of your day.